Before we begin, the presentation is a case study about Avasant working with the Greater Toronto Airports Authority to lead the digital transformation. And I think it's important, the topic, that driving digital transformation from the CIO Suite. You've heard several digital experts. I have been guilty of that as well, of making pronouncements that IT could very well be without a job. And in fact, Director of Network Architecture is probably one of the most, I don't know why no one in the Republican primary debates talks about losing directors of network architecture jobs, because it's as endangered as auto workers. But when done right, and that's why we are so privileged to have Martin over here, when done right, digital transformation can be real, can be driven by the CIO Suite, and can fundamentally transform the relationship between IT and the business to being IT literally becoming the anchor point around which the business pivots, the fulcrum around which the business pivots, and really driving business value. So the case study today will focus on the journey that GTAA has taken towards the digital transformation and some key learnings through there. We'll go through some of the history lessons on challenges with traditional IT. We'll talk about a 3-step program that Martin led at GTAA, and then we'll talk about what it meant in terms of how we start looking at things differently in the future. And this is important for us as consultants, for our clients in IT and other practices within clients, and also for technology companies and service providers to fundamentally look at how this relationship will be different in the future. So, again, it's really a privilege and an honor to share the stage with Martin, because Martin is one of those CIOs who gets it. We always go and say that the CIO role, and you've seen the 5 stages of IT. You'll go from obsolete to being the strategist. And we've seen a lot of IT departments that literally become the, please tell me how to get to Amazon and then please pack your bags, right? But the other extreme is the strategist. So yes, some IT departments are endangered, but Martin is an example of where the CIO ends up becoming the strategic leader of the business, respected strategic leader with his peers. And Martin, on behalf of Avasant, we'd like to thank you for your partnership and your friendship through this journey, because we've learned a lot through this process as well. So it's truly a privilege to share the stage with you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Edward. So before that we talk about this journey, I just would like to take 30 seconds to talk about Toronto airports. As it has been introduced before, we are the 2nd biggest international airport in North America, just after JFK. This slide that you see there talk about 38 million passengers per year. Actually, that's what's happened in 2014. Last year, we went to 41 million, so we are by far the biggest airport in Canada. And following our growth paths, we think that, by 2030, we should be in the neighborhood of 60 million passengers. So we're already planning to be a global hub in the marketplace. Very few global hubs are going to be surviving, and for sure we have the ambition and the vision to believe that we will be one of those. So if you could just... So if you look what's happening in the marketplace, as I mentioned before, we have a very ambitious plan. Essentially what's happening is what you want to do is, in order to be able to execute that plan, there's a few things that's happening in the marketplace. The first one is, now by far people realize that the boundary of the airport processes are way farther and bigger than the terminal footprint. Most of the customers start to check in at home, and what you want to do is to assist them through the entire journey as they are going through your facility, but for all intents and purposes, the airport now is far bigger than the footprint. Secondly, what you want to be able to do in order to be able to be cost effective and therefore attract more carriers and grow, you want to control your debt. At the end of the day, what you want to do is to be able to grow without having to build, or by pushing back as much building as possible. What I used to do with one of my peers, he might be the billion-dollar man, because each time that we want to have a new pier in the terminals costs $1 billion man. Me, I'm probably way cheaper and the $100 million person. So in other words, if we can be more efficient by leveraging the terminal as it is, by processes, we can delay a lot of that construction, reducing the debt, being more competitive, and continue to grow. When you're talking about processes, at the end of the day, no matter how you slice it, typically you're talking about IT somewhere. And this is what this journey is all about. So now, this is the situation that we are. We want to grow. We want to grow by enhancing our processes. And the key success factor in an airport world, beside the customer service, is what we call the minimum connection time. People will come connect through your airport if they can connect efficiently, constantly, within a shorter connection time. Otherwise, they will go to alternative airport. So this is what's going to allow you to win that war. So when we moved into, when we started that journey about 2 years ago, we realized that from an IT standpoint, we were not where we were supposed to be. And just to step back a little bit, in 2010, essentially up to 2010, Toronto Airport was an in-source company. At that time, we outsourced to a vendor. And the outsourcing deal essentially was financially driven. That was about costing cost, okay? What resulted into that is essentially we are probably, I would say we didn't outsource the processes, we out-tasked the process. Essentially, we're very directive as to what we want, and we were telling the vendor what to do, but we were not giving them the latitude and the opportunity to be successful as is. So as a result of that, the IT organization was probably one of the most self-centric organizations that we have seen, and probably in multiple IT classic environment you will see that, to a point where the rest of the business was simply ignoring us. They were counting on us to run the plumbing, as I would call, and do their own thing. All the agility, all the innovation was coming from the other branches. As a result also, within the organization, we simply had very little business knowledge. I had a lot of people knowing how to program, how to upgrade servers, how to run network. Very few people that knew what an airport is all about. And this is a mindset that the journey that we went through tried to help us to change that mindset. So,
So to summarize, when we started the journey, quickly Avasant and Martin, and this was really driven by the CIO's office, Martin working very closely with his other peers at the VP levels and directly with the president of the organization, we discovered that there was a few areas of misalignment. Now, this is a framework slide, but we didn't have to modify too much of the framework slide to reflect GTAA, since, as I said, it is a case study of both what is working so well today, as also with some of the challenges we faced initially. So if you looked at the business needs of innovate, reduce connection time, increase flow through, sweat the assets so that you don't need to invest. IT was, as Martin said, very self-centered, focused on technology capabilities, IT SLAs, rather than what would impact the business. The second was the business was dying in a dynamic changing model with Toronto Pearson literally becoming a gateway to not just the United States, but a gateway to the Americas from Asia and Europe, and a gateway to the world from the Americas. You'd be surprised as how many connections go from China to Brazil through Toronto that do not go through JFK or Newark or LA today. There was a need to drive business outcomes. The business outcomes are really passenger growth, reduced debt, reduced costs, and the IT was really focusing on technologies and plumbing to that point. The third was, yes, there is an element within IT which is directly relevant, and this is the sort of the boundary between what we would consider digital and what many people would consider digital, which is scalable, flexible, cost-effective solutions, or cloud. The organization was reluctant to move to cloud because of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt factor, or the loss of control factor. But nowadays, everyone's in the cloud. We have a large financial regulatory client that it's probably the second most important financial regulatory entity in the United States. Every element of its IT will be on Amazon Web Services. And no one has raised a question about it. But there was a large question about continuing capital investment. Who does the server patches? Who pays for the green wire? Who pays for the red wire? And finally, it was about agile solutions. Typically you would get into situations of, because of capital budgeting cycles, by the time the business analyst has identified business needs, the portfolio manager has put that in a project plan. It's gone through some quarterly project planning exercises. You might take 9 months to plan a project, and the average project could take 24 to 36 months to implement. You're talking about changes in desktop technologies that happen every 6 months. So the concept of obsolete when implemented. So there were projects at GTAA where by the time the project would be implemented, we'd know that the project would need to be redone over again, resource management being a really good example. So at that point, unfortunately, by the time Martin took over the organization, many of the tech, even the core technology decisions, such as how to extend Wi-Fi within the terminal, who should get Wi-Fi access, how should the retail concessionaires access Wi-Fi, were being increasingly taken over by the business. The business was in discussions with Cisco, the business was in discussions with Bell, TELUS, whoever. And there's nothing wrong with that, because nature abhors a vacuum. If IT cannot step up, and this was, I think, Martin and my joint advice to the business. It was partial advice, partial recommendation, partial imploration that says, we cannot stop you from innovating. And the business will continue to run a world-class airport. Please give us a year or 9 months to demonstrate that IT deserves a seat at the table. We were just asking for a seat. It ended up becoming the driver's seat in a leadership position through that journey. But please give us a chance to demonstrate that IT, under this new leadership, can demonstrate value. And everything you're asking for will be done, but will be done through a structured, coordinated way by a new way of doing IT. And that's where Martin's role becomes so critical. So based on that, there was a 3-step approach we took, and Martin's going to take you through 2 of them, and then I'll talk about the final step of taking the IT organization, the relationship between IT and the business, the relationship between the organization and the ecosystem of providers to the next level. So Martin.
Thank you, Ed. So if you can just put the slide. One of the things that I should have mentioned previously is one of the biggest challenges that we're having, despite of all these efforts, all the energy was related to life cycle management. So, and despite of all this investment, we were having a huge deficit, a technological deficit in terms of our infrastructure. So we were way behind in a lot of pieces. A lot of elements were completely no longer supported. So when we decided to go ahead, now at that time it was time to renew the contract, try to find a new business partner, a technology partner to help us to move it forward. For sure, what we did is we tried to turn around the table, and essentially said, okay, we have to recenter and refocus ourselves. Us as the business, we have to turn ourselves more toward the business, support them, bring business value, and let our technology provider dealing with what I used to call the plumbing. All the infrastructure, the application, the lifecycle management. This is not a business that I want to be into. I'm counting on my outsourcer, my technology partner to do it, but I will not tell him how to do it. That's up to him to do it. We'll establish what are the service level. And in order to be realistic also, you have to have the internal discussion about it. And this was kind of interesting. At some point when you were asking the business what is critical, everything is critical. So, and then you have to start to step back, and I kind of created a shock when I said, as far as I'm concerned, a payroll system is not a critical system. A financial system is not a critical system. What is critical is what allow to move passenger, bags, and aircraft, and if you lose it, you will have a system degradation or service degradation immediately. When you start to do this leap of faith to understand what is truly important, then you can establish the right service level, and you can help your business partner, your vendor, your technology provider to say, this is important to us, this is where we want you to focus. You know, the financial systems and the HR system, I want data integrity, but if the system is down for a couple of hours, I'm not going to cry. If I lose a check and counter for more than 10 minutes, I'm going to be in trouble. So this is the kind of discussion that we're having in order to be able to set the stage, not to tell them how to do their job, to tell them what we need in terms of business view, and now all the service levels are tied up to this level. At the end of the day, all of you that have been dealing in the outsourcing business, you know that usually the partner will talk to you about the uptime of the server, the network, and everything. I'm not interested into this. What I'm interested is the view at the end user level. You can add it up the way that you want. I'm looking for 1, 2, or 3 nines or 4 nines at the end service level, at the end user level. But you have to understand also that the more uptime you're asking, obviously, the more costly it is. And this is where one of the promises that we're doing is we will make sure that we have the right service level where we need it for our business. We will allow technology and structure transformation in order to bring the cost down. And the money that we will be freeing up with this, we will be able to reinvest it in what we call the blueprint, the thing that's going to bring value. So the entire strategy is how do we reduce the operation by leveraging new technology, by adjusting the service level to what they need, so we can take that money and now decide, okay, how can we help the business? So when we had achieved this process to free up some dollars, then we had this discussion with the business, so, okay, where should we be investing the dollars in order to bring some business value? Out of that discussion, we created what we call the blueprint. It's essentially, it's our roadmap leading to bring business value. You have the summary picture here, and essentially, you will see, I will bring you to a typical example where there's 4 layers, where we felt that we had to redo the infrastructure where you can collect raw data. Today, as the head was talking about, the Wi-Fi network, which is a given, and people and the customer in the terminal take it for granted, it's an incredible amount of information that we can use. I cannot tell you if Pierre or Peter or John is going to New York tomorrow, but I can tell you this phone is going every Monday morning to New York and it's coming back every Friday. So, and if you assume out of the previous conference that everybody more or less having an intelligent phone, I can tell you all this data is being captured, and now that's bring us to the second level where we have to start to structure this data. This is the BI, the business intelligence level, where we have to start to make sense out of it, which bring us to the third level, which is a set of application that we want to put in place that allow us to make better decision, a resource management system, which flight should be going to which gate. To come back to my experience, if I start to understand the passenger movement in the airports, I know where they are going, I can predict that there's going to be queuing at security. Can start to dispatch people prior that the queuing get done. I can see also that people are moving more in the duty-free, okay? And right now, all the gate assignment system is being done on an operational basis where essentially you put the bigger aircraft on the international in one area, the smaller one into another one. While you know, as an example, that flights going to China yield way more duty-free revenue than the one going to South. So it start to make much more sense to put those flights at gates close by the duty-free. This is the kind of decision that you can start to make and predict what's going to happen. And the last layer, obviously, you have collected the information, you have structured it, you have made a decision, then you have to communicate back to the customer. So as I was mentioning before, the footprint of the terminal now is way bigger than its physical landscape. So now we're talking about communicating to the customer, to mobile application, to the web, to obviously the FIDS display that we can commercialize with advertisement. But at the end of the day, we are convinced that over time, the more and more the way that we'll be communicating information with the customer is going to be done through the web and those kind of media, and not the classical FIDS display or screen that you have in the terminal. So now, just to summarize, we changed our way that we're doing business, that we're running the plumbing, we freed up some money, and with this money now we're investing to build something that we feel that's going to give us a competitive advantage.
And the last piece of the puzzle was, when we started this journey and we started defining zero-cost transformation, which Martin will talk about next, and digital ecosystem partnerships, there was a bit of, 1980s election campaign voodoo economics. I think that term was actually thrown around. This is all voodoo economics, Ed. You just can't make money magically disappear. So we created a structure, a commercial structure, which is to the heart of every digital and transformation engagement that we're advising our clients on, that allows clients to generate value from efficient IT service delivery effectiveness, a cost-effective IT solutions that free up costs, but still deliver the business value, not IT metrics. It also focuses on operational efficiency, which is around the business processes that Martin was talking around, but does that without telling the clients that you need to spend $100 million every 5 years on the next failed ERP upgrade, or the red patch is not included because section 3.5.1 of the contract is ambiguous on the red patch. And the third value is truly collaboration on defining and executing digital business strategies. Now, to be clear, a lot of these are known unknowns. We do not know what the digital strategy will be in a 7-year contract 3 years down the road. So we can't write down everything in a piece of paper and say, thou shalt execute, but we need a framework that enables both the client and their ecosystem partners to work collaboratively execute on that. So if you look at the execution objective, the lowest level is, and you'll see cloud, and we won't even talk about cloud as if it's a controversial topic anymore. That time has passed. We're past that inflection point where people need to justify where cloud is secure, safe, reliable, and whether we need checklists and health checks to move to the cloud. Just move to the cloud already. So migrate to enterprise cloud infrastructure. There will be hybrid cloud infrastructures, a combination of virtual private and public. There'll be some on-premise, primarily driven by performance needs. Importantly, lifecycle management. The red patch, yellow patch, blue patch, it's all included because it doesn't matter. There should never be another discussion with any vendor about lifecycle management. If you're having a discussion with your clients about lifecycle management, if you're failing, if you're a client, you're having a discussion with a vendor about lifecycle management, you're failing. The second level is migrate to enterprise class application platforms. Some of those cloud enabled, some of those traditional application platforms provisioned through the cloud in many cases. And really it's about open architecture and really orchestrating business processes across the fractured groups that we talked about. And the last level is truly work with the business to define new digital business models and manage the digital ecosystem. Now, if you look at the top 3 layers, we talked about a lot of things that are not part of traditional outsourcing contracts, lifecycle management, transformation, the typical stuff that causes money and NPV, IRR kind of discussions. No one's going to spend, like someone said, love your CIO, but maybe not your CFO so much. So the CIO-CFO tension, there is no resolution to that. I just need to solve it. And the solution we have taken at GTAA, and also for many of our large transformation clients, is the concept of zero-cost transformation. And Marte will talk a bit about how it applies and how it will work in some cases, and maybe not in other cases.
Thank you, Ed. So what I would say is, first of all, at the end of the day, okay, obviously there's always a battle for funds within the organization. And if the funds need to be redirected to build a terminal, okay, there's probably other ways to be funded. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest problem, or the biggest issue that we were trying to address, is to make sure that there was alignment between the vendor, the technology vendor, and us. And let's use the example where we have to redo a website. Okay, we want to redo our website. The classical way is you will contract the vendor to say, please redo our website. It's going to charge us, let's say, $2 million for do it. Then there's going to be the race for the bottom for him to deliver it according to the spec to the lowest possible costs. So essentially, he can get his margin, and hopefully you will have spec'd everything to get what you're looking for. Now, again, if you're turning the table and you're saying, listen, at the end of the day, from a business standpoint, what I'm looking for is accelerating in the penetration rate, having more people going to the web. And instead of giving you a fixed fee of $2 million for it, you're telling me that your web is great, fantastic. For every touch that I will have, I will give you $2 or $3. So now we're aligned. The vendor is absolutely motivated to develop a good product and continue to enhance it, because each time that it enhances, the traffic will grow. The traffic grow, obviously, is getting compensated more. And from a business standpoint, I can sell more advertisement and I have some other business benefit. So that's the spirit of those goals, where at the end of the day, what you're trying to look for is alignment. It's not all the projects that are or all the transformations that are appropriate for that, but whenever you can do it, it's extremely powerful, because now you're sure that the two partners are really pushing in the right direction. And whenever it's possible, the web, in the maintenance system, as an example, in infrastructure, this is where we're trying to go to make sure that, at the end of the day, I'm going to give you more money, Mr. Vendor, because you have been good, you have performed, and then I'm going to have more business benefit. And at the end of the day, that's kind of the paradigm. The more money you give him, the more successful you are, which is kind of counterintuitive, but this is where you're trying to do. We had some interesting discussion internally, but gradually and culturally we're getting there. I think that's probably the way to move forward.
And related to that, so right now we've said no service towers, no capital budgeting, IRR's infinity, no upfront investment. I think we need to go back and redo a lot of business school books as a result. But this is real life. And if you look at what this means for value, so how do we define value? So we've all been through those endless base case analyses, which if I had a dime for every base case analysis template I have shredded over the last 20 years of doing this, And no offense to people in the room who do base case analysis, I'd be a very rich man. But the reason is, this is how traditionally IT has been treated. We look at TCO, and the lower the TCO, the higher scores the vendor gets, because the job of IT is to reduce TCO. It's a common, and sometimes we're really clever because we know that TCO is not just ongoing cost, but they may be one-time costs. So it's innovative to say, my base case template has a provision for one-time cost and yours doesn't, and that's why we are a better consulting firm. Ultimately, all it leads to, as Martin said, is a race to the bottom. You think there's a race to the bottom for factory jobs between China and Vietnam? There's a race to the bottom every time a client does a reverse auction for system administrators. There's a race to the bottom every time somebody says if a delivery center in Moldova or the part of the Ukraine that we don't know which country it actually is in, and there's a reverse auction. So you can be in the race to the bottom world, which is fine. But the other option is to say, no, IT adds value. As Martin said, IT is part of every business process. No innovation can happen without some technology invented. You can't land a plane without technology. You can't sell a product without technology. The other option is the net economic value added, which really says, let's focus on maximizing business value. So the entire analysis is on how much business value can these new initiatives bring to IT, bring to the business. And from there, you take off the cost of IT. So in some cases, to Martin's point, it may be okay spending more for technology capabilities if it can double retail sales in a particular segment. In other cases, it may be okay to retrench IT spending because they're not linked to driving business value. But you go from a mindset of, I'm going to go to the race to the bottom of maybe 3 to 5% of IT costs. So let's say you're the best CIO in the world, best vendor in the world, and you reduce IT costs by 40%. So congratulations, you've increased your earnings by 1.2% of your revenues, which is a great number. But imagine being the CIO or the CEO or the vendor SVP that says, I can increase your revenues by 5%, and I can reduce your operating costs, which are 60% of your revenues, by 20%. Which one would we rather be? And based on this, these two concepts that tie into the three-step approach of look at integrated services, define a roadmap, and do a three-level cake on how you go to contract for it, we come up with some lessons learned. And this is the last slide, and I think we are between you and the lunch. So first, the decisions will be made by the CIO, the CEO, or the board. So if we're spending time building relationships with people below the C-level, this relationship would not have happened if we weren't working with Martin, and Martin wasn't working very directly with the president. Second, business involvement is key. At every key meeting, it was a business determining what would happen, and it was ultimately the business that had to bless the strategy to move forward. The second point is from a traditional IT point of view, the whole business analysis, business relationship management role needs to change. The IT organization needs to be much more business savvy and a lot less technology focused in order to achieve this. The third takeaway is that, when we started this journey ahead of time, I had one vendor ask me a question: is it infra or apps? Yes. I don't know how else to answer the question. Don't ask questions like that because fragmented IT services are not going to be the answer. Automation, I know there's a lot of people here that, RPA. The leading vendors in this room have been doing RPA for the last 20 years. Automation is yesterday's news. What clients need is integration of business processes and transformation of the business. Automating a contact center is likely not going to be the entire answer to that. So the answer is focus on driving business improvements and integrated technology capabilities rather than creating the best server patching tool. We kind of assume you have it. If you didn't have it, we probably wouldn't be talking to you, but that's not the differentiator anymore. And the last piece is, please don't tell us you have 100,000 people in India or 300,000 people globally, or you've got 27 global delivery centers. We get it. All we need are the 20 people that'll do the work. And it's really driving the strategic leadership that does the work. And ultimately, it does boil down to, does the client believe, as a partner, we have the right resources who will do the delivery in making this a more confidence in being able to do the work. So we'll leave you with these thoughts.